Alrighty then, so I'm going to try here to walk you through a little bit of my thinking in the measurements I'm going to use. So in the video, I start with this 8 foot by 8 foot platform here, and I know it's 8 feet because it says 8 feet and 8 feet here. This little step off the front is an extra foot, and it's going to be 8 feet long because it's the same size as the rest of the platform. So when I start in the video, I go ahead and start with let me just set that up real quick. I go ahead and start with a big sheet and I cut off a little section that is 8 feet in scale, and I cut that section off, and then I know that that section is 8 feet, right? And then once I work with that section, I am going to take it and I'm going to cut it again into the height of this, which is 8 feet. And I don't need to account for the thickness of the mat board. Also with this step, I don't need to account for the thickness of the mat board. And because this one does not have those little overhangs, I only have to make it exactly 1 foot in scale. So that becomes the 8 by 8 up here, and this becomes the 1 foot over here. Alrighty, so once I have that, I'm gonna make the two sides that go here and here so that I can glue them together. I'm gonna lay them out this time instead of cutting them out as this 1 foot by 8 section and this little piece right here. If I did want to cut them out, then I could cut them out from this chunk in the normal way. Instead, I just cut out another piece and laid out my shape on that piece here. And when I laid out that shape, I was looking for, when I laid out that shape, just 1 second. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and lay out that piece. And when I lay out that piece for the side of my flat, what I want to keep in mind is that this right here is 8 feet in scale, and this right here is 1 foot in scale. And I don't need anything extra, right? But this height right here is not going to be what I think it's going to be. So what I mean by that is that you would assume that because this is 1 foot here and 6 inches here, that I could just go ahead and make it 6 inches by 8 feet, 6 inches, 1 foot, 6 inches. But you need to take off 1 tick for the height of the mat board here and 1 tick of the height of mat board here. So this is going to be again 1 foot in scale, or 1/2 inch in real inches minus a tick, and this is going to be 1/4 inch minus a tick. And that is pretty clear for that piece. The next part is we're going to need some supports that go this way, here, 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 and then a support across the bottom. This support here and is not as visible. It has some extra room where you're just going to tuck it up in here and you don't have to see the bottom of it at all. So that can be an arbitrary height. So I go back to my string of 8-inch pieces and I cut a piece that will work, and then I take 2 ticks off the side. Those ticks are for the width of these two side pieces. Then I do another one and I make this one the height, the exact height of the front of the step, which is right here, which is going to be 1/4 inch or 6 inches in scale minus 1 tick. And I'll cut that one exactly out and again cut 2 ticks off the side so that I get the correct width under there. The other thing I can do is I can hold it up and make sure that it's the right width. I will warn you though that if you're not measuring, what could happen is that you end up putting, if you glue the thing in there, So if this is the top piece and these are the two sides, and you cut a piece that's the right size, let me do that again. So you have your top piece, your 8 by 8, and then you have your two laid out pieces here, like this. Okay, and then you have seriously. So there's a cat crawling on my lap, and he is insisting on hitting my hand with his tail. So if you put a piece right here that's the right size, it'll be square. If you put a piece right here that's bigger, it will still fit, just these sides will bow out. So you want to make sure that you measure that piece so that it's accurate in that space, okay? And the same goes for your backside piece. It's going to be the same size. It's just going to be 1 foot tall minus a tick. So again, I'll cut out that piece, 1 foot tall minus a tick, or minus 2 ticks for each side, and then cut that out. Your piece on the underside, however, you can just make a mark at, it needs to be that same height. So it needs to be, or a little smaller, it could be smaller, a 1/2 inch or 1 foot in scale minus a tick, and then run that on the inside here all the way down. It's not necessary because if you glue this piece to this step, then you have a support on this piece. And so you don't need this support to make a stair step, so you don't have to lay it out. So that's an important little detail that'll help strengthen your piece overall. The next part is the stairs. And this is a 4 foot mark, and these are all 1 foot. And I want the overall width to still be 4 feet. So instead of trying to make these pieces hang over here in a significant way, I'm just going to inset this piece right here. So what does that mean for you exactly? Well, what that means is that when I cut out these pieces, this piece here, I'm going to go 4 foot by 4 foot. I'm not going to make it bigger on this side and this side. I'm just going to make it bigger on this side. So I'm going to make this 4 foot and then 4 foot and a tick. So when I cut out my strip of this one, right, I'm going to cut out a strip for this. That strip is going to be 4 feet in scale, okay? And then that first one is going to be 4 feet. That would be 4 feet in scale, and then I'm going to actually add a tick on top of it, and that's that little overhang that'll be right here. And then for all these steps, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do 1 foot plus a tick. So I'm going to do 1 foot plus a tick, 1 foot plus a tick, 1 foot plus a tick, 1 foot plus a tick. And I'm going to do that 4 times and cut 4 stairs off. Then I'm going to lay out the side of the stairs the same way I did here. So when I lay out the side of the stairs, I'm going to cut out, or I'm going to consider it a whole square, right? And I know that the length of that square in total is going to be 4 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, right? So that is an 8 foot length. So it's going to, again, be 8 feet long. I think in actuality I cut it off the 8 foot stripe that I had before, or laid it out on that 8 foot stripe, but it's irrelevant. You can do it however you like. And this side right here is theoretically 2 foot 6. But since we have to account for that piece at the top here, it's 2 foot 6 minus a tick. And that goes out for 4 real feet, or 4 in scale feet. And then I brought that down, measured over another foot, brought that down, measured over another foot, brought that down. This is a little, let me back that up a little bit, because I made it like generally spaced correctly, but you know, perfectionist here. So I made each of these 1 foot in scale, and then I need to come down 1/2 inch at a time. So I know that there are 5 steps here, and I mark all those 1/2 inches. And then I want to go again. This is 2'6" minus a tick. This is 6 inches minus a tick. But this right here is not 6 inches minus a tick from the last one. Well, it is. But it's easier, at least for me, to make a little mark at what it should be, and then minus a tick, minus a tick, minus a tick. Because as I'm working up, I don't want to make a compounded error there. And it's a lot easier to mark the 6-inch marks because it's every 1/4 inch. It's an easy thing to see, whereas the other one can be a little difficult to see. Also, when you're cutting strips, I'm a little used to marking, when I'm cutting strips, I'm not thinking about this is a 1/2 inch minus a tick, this is a 1/2 inch minus a tick. I'm thinking about stacking that difference back. So because of that, you just need to be careful when you're looking at that and you're making adjustments, that you're keeping that in mind. So I usually lay out one of these, cut it out, and then trace it onto another piece of paper. When you trace it though, you're not really done. Like you can see the video, I trace it, then I go through and make sure all these measurements are correct. I go 2'6", 2'6", remember, like measure right here, 2'6" in scale, and then minus a tick on both so that that line is straight. And I want to make sure all those things are straight. And when I cut it out, it should match. When you're cutting, make sure that you're paying attention to getting up into these corners, right? Um, but not overshooting as much as you can. So you actually want to cut this kind of upside down so that you stab into this corner and pull back, stab into this corner, pull back, stab into this corner, pull back, stab into this corner, pull back. A lot of people ask, why can't they just, make this the second set of stairs right here? Because they would theoretically fit right inside of each other. And if you can pull that off, more power to you. But guess what? You're going to overshoot on one of these two. Somebody is going to get some really ugly marks, or you're going to spend your time in here cutting out, being really careful, and trying to cut. Let me get another color so that's a little easier to see. You're going to spend your time in here. Let's do like cyan. That'll be bright enough to see. So you're going to spend your time in here coming in this edge, pulling up, 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 pulling back, pulling back, pulling back, pulling back. So the time you save not having to draw this twice is not super effective because you're going to spend it painstakingly cutting those pieces out, right? Yeah, so you can do that. More power to you. There you go. So we lay out those pieces and then glue them together. When you're cutting out the front and the back, you again want to take into consideration how you're going to put it together. And here we, no, eyedropper. There we go. Brush. So we left room for this little guy right here, but we didn't leave room for the overhang of the side here. So how are we going to deal with that is we're just going to inset the side here and here so that they're not overhung, so the steps sit on top, which means that when we go to cut this piece and this piece, the two that start our framing, we want to make sure those inset a little bit. So not only are those not 4 feet, they're not just 4 feet minus 2 ticks either. If they were 4 feet minus 2 ticks, then it would be the exact same width as all of these steps, and they would not overhang the way we want them to. They would not sit inside like this. They would sit right on the edge like that. So we actually have to remove 4 ticks, which is a full 1/4 inch, So instead of this being 4 feet, it's 4 feet minus 4 ticks. Okay. And so in scale, that gets a bit smaller, and those measurements are important. I usually cut a whole strip that way because not only am I going to need an arbitrary size support for the back side, okay, I'm going to need a perfectly sized support for the front side, which is 6 inches minus 1 tick for the width, the height of that top platform, right? So it's right here, it's 6 inches minus 1 tick. I am going to need the height for the other 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces for step heights, and those, as long as they're bigger than whatever that size is, they can be whatever you want. So they can just be a bigger size. Make sure you do measure in some way though, or use your cutting mat to make sure those cuts are straight, because what you don't want to have happen is you don't want, step that back a little bit. So what you don't want is to come in here and cut a little bit off. So instead of cutting nice and straight, you cut like that, and then your next cut's like that, and then your next cut's like that, and then your next cut's like that. So you get completely different shapes. That's why you want to measure both sides, even if you're just cutting something for the support of a wall. All right. So that's all your measurements for the staircase. When I did the newel posts, I did 4-inch posts, which means I went ahead and did a 3-inch piece to glue together. It's pretty much the smallest I can. If you're going to buy a dowel or use a dowel to replace a part of this set, I would recommend replacing the newel posts. You could easily use a round dowel for this as well. You don't necessarily need to make a bunch of little posts. Or if you don't have one, you could use something like a dowel that's a little larger, maybe a straw or something else. You just need to make sure that you're gluing it appropriately and putting nice caps on the top and the bottom. You can also put beads on those newel posts if you want, or anything you'd like to help decorate them up. This here, all of these items I just measured by hand from the model, as well as the heights of all of these pieces. The height of the newel posts, however, I got from the drafting. So the height of the newel posts is not completely visible. So I looked at right here is 1, 2, and I then 1, 2, 3. That says 1 foot. Yeah, because it's 9 inches to here and 1 foot to here. It's a little hard on the scan, but so it's at least 3 feet and a little. And if I look at some other things, that's about 3 to 4 inches plus a ball at the top. So that is how I got my measurement, and it was 3'3", and I think I used my cutoff pieces from the other 3'3" element in the set, but I'm not positive on that. So those are your railings, your platform. This wall here is going to be the full 11 foot 5 inches. Is that right? It's 12 feet minus this. So this right here is 3 and 4, so that's 7. And that is going to make it 11 foot 5 inches. On the scan, that looks a little bit like a 6, but it's a 5. So I cut out a whole strip at 11 foot 5 in scale so that this wall, and some other things are all the same. Little did I realize that this guy's sitting on the platform here. So this one is 11 foot 5, and then this one, and you could do this one as well, cut a foot off of it. But they're relatively easy. Also, if you made a mistake and cut it out at 10 foot 5, which is what this wall is, that's fine. If you end up doing that, you just need to glue this piece 1 foot off the bottom of the staircase. So you won't actually see, what I'm saying is you won't actually see the back side of that wall right here. You won't see this side. So you'll just need to glue this up when you glue it on, you're just going to glue it starting right here to the back of that staircase so that it hits the right height. But that's only if you mess it up. So cut it out at 11 foot. It's a little difficult to do when there's a cat sitting on your tablet. So cut it out at 11 foot 5 all the way across. And then you're going to cut the window out from underneath it. So I messed this up a couple times, and I would recommend, in order to make it a little bit easier for yourself, that you make a couple marks on that piece. So you know that it's 11 foot 5, and then make a mark at 8 inches here, 9 inches, 2 inches, 4 inches, 3 inches, and then take that across the flat. Come down 3 feet in scale, take that across the flat. Now for the actual inset of the window, it is 2 foot 6. There it is. 2 foot 6, and it's centered in the window. So what I did is I measured across and found the center, and then struck that center mark, and then came out 1 foot 3 inches in scale on both sides. Then you have this mark, and you can cut the window out. Then I cut these strips. I cut several strips out of Bristol board in 3-inch sections and made those miter corners. When you're marking them, you want to look at marking really specifically the most interior mark here and then bringing that out. So this is the important part. Don't try and mark over here. Try and mark where those things come together. For now, I just glued that onto the edge of the thing, and this is a whole strip you cut out at 8 inches and just glue to the top. And this, since you have that mark there, while it's still flat, I would go ahead and come over here and mark another mark over here. So that, and again, that's 9 plus 8 down. And that will allow you to make a good, and if you want to put a mark here, that might be useful as well, so that you can line up all of those moldings later. This one will sit on top of the staircase, so it's not going to be as important. But thinking ahead a little bit might help you later down the line. Then you're going to support the back of this piece, which is all independent of measurement. So just mark and match and glue that in place. You can also glue these two pieces together, and that will help you to keep these things kind of stable. I will also say that when I was working, I realized that some of the marks I had made on the map board when I was laying out these were actually very helpful in lining up these pieces here. So I lined them up to the erased marks I had made, and that worked out really well. This wall over here is a little bigger than it needs to be, but when I made it a little bigger than it needs to be, but this side goes off the edge and nobody sees it, so it's not a big deal that it's a little bigger, and it was much easier for me to do the math on by just making it a little bit bigger. What I mean by that is that I know this platform right here is 8 feet, right? And so this is 1 and 4, so that's 5 feet. So this right here is 3 feet to the edge of the platform. So knowing that this is 3 feet to the edge of the platform means I can just cut out a piece that's 3 feet on that long strip I've just cut out for this wall right here, and I've got this wall. And as I told you before, I just glued it on here and then glued it onto the platform here, and then added a support here. This whole wall offers support here, and this whole wall will offer support there. I'm going to do a little erasing over here because it's getting just a tad bit muddy with all the talking. Okay. So now I go ahead and construct this wall here. And as I said, I had made it just a little bit too big because I didn't account for the thickness of the mat board. So there's one thickness of mat board here for this wall, and there's a 1 foot by 1 foot piece here, and then it's inset from the edge by 1 tick here for the thickness of the baseboard. So what this should be is 8 feet, right? 8 feet here, minus 1, so it should be 7 feet. And that should track pretty well with the measurements of the actual wall, because 1'9" plus a 3-inch molding makes 2 feet. A 3-foot door and a 2-foot and a 1'9" plus 3-inch molding here means that from here to here is 2 feet. From here to here is 3 feet, and from here to here is 2 feet again, and then here is 1 foot, right? So 5, 6, 7, 8, that's the whole 8-foot platform. So for this guy right here, I have a 7-foot wall minus 1 tick for here and minus 1 tick for a little fudge room over here. Let me erase that for a second. So I know how big that is, and then I go ahead and lay out the door. The same thing. I'm actually, instead of trying to measure in 2 feet and 2 feet, I go ahead and find the center point, so I make sure the door is exactly in the center. That way, if I did make a mistake, like I did over here, and I cut a tick off each side, I know that door is in the center. If I made a problem with making the wall big enough, and I measure in from this edge, 2 feet, I would end up measuring in from the edge and starting to make the door in the wrong place, and I'd have to cut the whole piece over again rather than just looking at trimming some pieces off the edge. In case you can't tell, the window above it lines right up with the door, or it should. The actual drawing is not square in Photoshop, which is why it's off a little bit. But these line up right above it, and then you're gonna make this mark at the top of the door at 6'8". Now I know that because doors are 6'8", also because it's marked over here. But doors are 6'8". So then I have these measurements, which some crazy person did not measure the interior of it. So now I have to go off the measurements from the top to figure it out. So I go down 9, 8, 2, 3. Nope, 4 here, 3, and then again, I did not measure this, and then 3, and then something. So in order to, you can go and do the math or know that this is 4 inches, obviously this is still 3, and then this is 1 foot in scale. And you may already have figured that out from doing your drawing itself. I support this wall, and while you're here, it might be worth it to go ahead and mark where that molding sits on the wall. I also went ahead and made this 2-inch piece a kind of fatter 2-inch on the model, because 2 inches in scale on the Bristol board was very, very tight to cut out. I went ahead and put my frame all the way around, and the door itself I measured. So here I have 6.5, 9, 5, 9, and 6.5. And I made those measurements and then just stroked a line all the way up. Then went over here, got those measurements, and stroked that line all the way across. And I just went for the bigger square, not the interior square. And that allowed me to cut out that bigger chunk here. And then I cut that one out on one. And then I went ahead and cut out another where I just cut out this interior piece, the smaller piece. And I did lay this on top of another one. I laid the new cut on top of another cut and basically used the measurements that I had to transfer so that I could cut it out a little better. Including, so that allows those pieces to be stepped inside of each other. And I glued on a bead here, taped the door inside the doorway. And that's about it for the measurements on the door. This guy was pretty easy. I have so here I have a measurement right here, how big that is. And it's 1 foot this way, as it's described over here, right? So I have those measurements. And again, I'm going to do this with the square we talked about in class, where it's the same measurement all the way around. So I just can cut out a strip and it's going to be 1 foot minus a tick at 3'5". And the same for this big pillar is going to be 1 foot minus a tick at 11 feet. 11 feet because it's 12 feet total, and but it's sitting on the platform. So I just remove a foot for this bottom platform here, and a tick on the surround measurement, but not on the height measurement. Then I make this little piece here, which is 4 feet wide. So I cut a piece that's 4 feet wide. And then to find out how tall it is, I'm just going to take the measurements I do know and subtract from there. I believe in my actual model, I changed the height of this. I pulled these up to the same height and connected them. And if you'd like to do that, that's fine as well. I'm not entirely sure why I did that, but you would bring this down the measured amount here, which is 7 inches. So you'd measure 7 inches down and just cut that part off, right? And then you've got 3 inches up here. Oops. Maybe you wouldn't do that. I'm just trying, I got a little lost there. I was trying to tell you how big to cut this slice right here. So I just add 8, 9, 2, 10, and add those together, and that's how big you're going to cut this thing. And then you don't need to remove any ticks. And then from this bottom edge here to this bottom edge here, you use a tape dispenser or something to get that, or a spline, or just something to get that curve. And then I traced this one onto the other one and cut the same thing out again. Now another thing you could do is you could take this dimensioned measurement of 4 feet, or this dimensioned measurement of 3'5", and you could cut out 3'5", and this time just remove the 7 inches from the top that's here and remove the 3 inches from the bottom that's there. I think that's actually how I did it in the video, because you can see me remove a little bit from here and then arch the whole thing. So that's that. That's that. The door, don't forget to put supports behind it. I went ahead and put plexiglass in the windows. I think that's it. I think that's all the measurements that are in this project and how to figure them out. If I haven't covered some of them though, this should give you an idea of how to figure out the measurements that you need from here on out. Thanks.